Thanks a lot, both Paramounts of Gastro for joining us in HealthBuzz. Literally, our cover pick has created a sensation in the market, sir. Thanks a lot for taking time while human race is facing the worst situation ever over the past century. Thanks, Sandy. So, to start off with, sir, how was it even possible to start AIG from a ground level and make it as world class and set a benchmark and make India pride?
So, I am Nageshwar Reddy and with me is Gv Rao. Actually, our association started more than 36 years back. We started practice together in the field of gastroenterology. I'm a physician and Dr.Gv Rao is a surgeon. So together we started. At that time, 36 years back, gastroenterology was very primitive. It was still not a known specialty. Mostly cardiology, neurology, these were the specialties that were very well known. So we started together and we realized that incidence of gastrointestinal disease is extremely high in our country. But unfortunately, most of the patients who are suffering from gastrointestinal disease belong to middle or lower middle class, unlike cardiac patients who came from a higher class or higher influence group. Nevertheless, we thought if we had large volumes of patients, we could set up institutions, because it's not only large volumes, but if you have to do it at a lower or optimum cost, then you would attract more patients throughout the country to run it. So we started first with the Asian Institute of Gastroenterology in Somajiguda, 2004, and before that we were actually having a practice in Somajiguda from 1986. So when we started this 2004, initially we were told that if we start a separate Institute of Gastroenterology, there won't be enough patients to fill the hospital, so we had to make it multi-specialty and so on. But we realized that this 200-bedded hospital got filled up very rapidly because we are offering high quality services at a very low cost. So the problem was how to offer the high quality services low cost. First of all, you should have a very good trained manpower, which is going to be costly, especially high quality doctors are going to be expensive. The second thing was that if you have to use very up-to-date instruments, high-end instruments, which again is going to be cost. So we came up with a formula that what we'll do is we'll make our institute an academic institute. Instead of running it like any commercial institute, we'll make an academic institute where teaching, research and all become prominent. So that's why it attracted very high-quality consultants at a much lower pay. The second thing is we got into agreement with many manufacturers of all these high-quality instruments and told them, look, we'll be using our instruments, but give us at a free of cost, at a low cost, because many of the students are trained with us are going to buy your instruments. So you can showcase this, like window shopping, showcase these instruments with us. So with the combination of this, we could create a very high international standard institute, but still at a low cost. And the combination of all this attracted a lot of patients from all over the country. Also, we started doing procedures which are not commonly done, very advanced ERCP, third space endoscopy. Similarly, Dr.Gv Rao was doing very advanced laparoscopy, natural orifice endoscopy procedures, which again attracted a lot of patients from all over not only the country but surrounding countries. We then stepped up in 2015. We realized that we have to expand further because these 300 beds were not enough. Fortunately, at that time, the government gave us this land of approximately 7 or 8 acres. And this was a very barren land. I was not very happy that we got this, but you can see the transformation now that has occurred in Gachibowli. We called it the AIG hospital because we soon realized that in addition to a single specialty, we should have support of other specialties. So we put up this AIG hospital, 850 bedded, very modern. In fact, most rating agencies, including the Newsweek, have called this one of the best hospitals in the world, not in a country, in the world, in view of its infrastructure, the type of electronic systems, the type of equipment we have in it. We also started again recruiting very high quality staff who are dedicated to academic research, and we have a separate tower just for it. So using this combination and having a very, I think, steady fast view that this should go same way without looking at the commerce part, we are able to build up it. Of course, it's not just two of us, it's a large group of people who are involved in this, and I think all of them played a role. And ultimate result you see as the AIG hospitals now, which is rated as one of the best.
And the association of decade is definitely a biggest achievement, I can say that, in any given profession. And share your biggest challenges and when you're working together, you both, in your words.
As Dr. Reddy has told you very rightly, 36 years back when we started our practice, gastroenterology was never rated as a specialty by itself actually. It was the heroes of those days were the cardiologists, cardiothoracic surgeons, And the biggest drawback of that era was actually both the physicians and the surgeons seemed to be competing with each other. That was what was responsible for those specialties have developed, but not to the extent that they should have developed, because both of them treated this as competitive specialties. But what happened with minimally invasive procedures like in all fields was actually minimally invasive procedures evolved very rapidly. And patients had an option of opting for a minimally invasive option, which is as good as a major surgical procedure. So it's only when people start working together, wherein the physicians, surgeons start working together, we understand that it will be a win-win situation for both. And also at the end of the thing, actually the patient gets the maximum benefit. He or she will have the best in the world. Actually, it is not that the patient comes to me that we have to do surgery, or the patient goes to Dr. Reddy, an endoscopy procedure has to be done. So actually over the period of time, Dr. Reddy has created such a thing that every patient, every difficult patient that comes into the thing, it goes to a board wherein all the concerned specialists sit together and decide what is best for the patient. So that has been the motto of the hospital actually. So we deliver what is best for the patient. It is not that the ego of the physician or the surgeon actually. In most of the time, I mean almost every day we have these meetings between 3 and 4 where majority of the patients are discussed and we deliver what is best for the patient.
Very important point that Gv Rao has pointed out, that problem with most doctors, especially when they're collaborating specialties, the ego. The ego is a problem which in medical fields is a barrier for growth to occur. So one of the things
Definitely.
we break before we get across this barrier was to break this ego. It's not only the ego between say surgeons, physicians, but also between different specialties, but also nurses. Everybody has got ego, because medical profession has got a very high string group of people. You're all doing work which is involving patient lives. So that sometimes it becomes very high strung, and therefore egos matter. It's very important to break the egos, create an institution.
Thanks a lot for your thoughts, sir. And kindly let us know, AG is renowned for a lot of inventions in the gastro. Kindly let us know inventions that you both have made, and also please throw some light node surgery, which has created kind of impeccable buzz in the medical field across the globe.
Gv Rao to do about node surgery, because he's a pioneer, world's pioneer in this. But let me tell you the beginnings are very interesting, because we saw some reports coming from Johns Hopkins from a friend of ours, Kalu, who was in porcine model, going through the stomach of model, animal model, getting into the peritoneal cavity and doing a lot of surgery. So I told GV, why don't we, I think we should start doing this. And we had a problem here, because animal models in our country, especially in Hyderabad, using a porcine model is not so easy. So GV came up with a novel idea, why don't you use the chicken model? So we are the first ones in the world to actually do surgeries on chicken. Going through the endoscopy, going to the stomach of the chicken and doing all sorts of surgeries without opening the stomach. So this was very, very novel, and in fact, when the first patient came who required this, Gv Rao will describe that later, but it was presented at the American Society of Gastroenterology Surgery, and after Dr. Gv Rao presented this, the whole audience of 5,000 people stood up and clapped for more than 5 minutes. This was in fact, maybe Gv would like to.
Yeah, again, as I told you, actually, it is a sheer association between the physician and surgeon which has led to this actually. So unless and until you work with the endoscopist who is doing a lot of endoscopies, you don't know the nuances of doing this and what are the limitations of doing this procedure. And also we should have somebody like Dr. Reddy who should be encouraging to do these procedures, because we took all the possible precautions. We knew that we had a lot of limitations those days, but after the initial presentation that came in, we thought we could translate this, and then we had our own work that we did on the chicken model, because as Dr. Reddy has told you, we didn't have access to the porcine models those days, and we had very good results those days actually with the initial avian model, and subsequently we had one of the patient who presented with burns on the abdominal wall, who came with an acute pain and an appendicitis. So we were able to successfully do that through this flexible scope. This is basically because absolutely a sheer cooperation between the physician and the surgeon. Otherwise, a very experienced endoscopist and a surgeon together, we have to put in together the limitations of the flexible scope, which can be overcome by some amount of surgical principles. So both these things have been put together for that actually, and it created a biggest this thing, and people, in fact, it came in Time magazine. They thought it's going to be the biggest revolution. Yes, it created a biggest revolution, but the pace at which it had started off did not take off, basically because of a lot of limitation of technology. But in the last decade, again, the whole thing has come back again. Now we are talking about the new nodes, new equipment has come, new energy sources have come. And I'm sure a lot of these procedures, in fact, initially we thought all these are science fiction things which cannot be duplicated, but now they're translating into real-time scenarios, and we have these procedures, some of these procedures being done regularly in endoscopic practice now.
Definitely, sir. I would say this rare combination has created miracles in the field of gastro.
So one of the things that we always, any new innovation or invention that comes in gastroenterology should first come to AIG and then go rest of the country or the world. So like this, for example, the capsule endoscope, we're the first to introduce in this Asia Pacific region. Paul Swain, the inventor of capsule endoscope, came to us for a workshop and he described the first crude instrument. I said, no, we should get it first. So 2004, we are the first to introduce this revolutionary technology. Treatment for pancreatic stones is to be done with a combination of a machine called extracorporeal shockwave lithotripsy and endoscopy. This combination, gastroenterologists never thought of before. But we said we should do this, so we first introduced pancreatic endotherapy, which has now become the standard of care of pancreatic disease treatments for many patients all over the world. Similarly, many new instruments, for example, the cholangioscope, the spike cholangioscope is a tiny instrument which can be passed into the bile duct, pancreatic duct. We introduced it for the first time. Similarly, with the first disposable duodenoscope, first time in the country we introduced this. So our aim is to introduce all these new technologies not only for the country but for the world, and this is one of the pioneering things that we always sort of seen forward. So we always look out for new technologies. For example, we are now into artificial intelligence. We are tied up with a very famous Japanese firm, Olympus, and a Canadian firm. We were now working on artificial intelligence introduction into endoscopy, again for the first time in the country. So we are looking at all the time new innovations. We encourage youngsters in our unit to come up with ideas and then sort of see whether we can make this into realities.
The same thing happened on the surgical side, actually, Arun. Actually, we had technologies which evolved very rapidly, and the industry was very supportive to us. Actually, as Dr. Reddy has told you, that we were able to get this technology very first. Actually, in fact, the infrared laparoscopy was first ever time tested in our institute. Actually, we now evolved so much that we have 3D, 4K laparoscopy, indigo sign-in. All these have come in the minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery also. But at the same time, again, this combination of physician surgeon has led to a separate specialty called as intraoperative endoscopy now. Now, this is the new buzz in the GI circles right now. If you take any of the academic meeting that you have, now we have a separate session on this intraoperative endoscopy where the physicians and surgeons are coming together to do these procedures. These are hybrid procedures, and we have, for the first ever time, we created this hybrid theaters, modular theaters, or voice control theaters in AIG. I think, I mean, any one of you are interested, I think, can come down to AIG and see this thing. Actually, these bring down the amount of stress on the performing endoscopists of the surgeon, improve the outcomes, and also increase the speed at which we are doing the thing, and decrease the complications of the routine surgical procedure.
Such beautiful thoughts, sir. I really don't know. For just one innovation, it takes ages for the scientists, and how you both are managing to make miracles in the field. Seriously impeccable job, sir. Thanks. And this question is to Dr. Reddy Garu. Rejecting an open offer from Harvard University, which is considered to be one of the world's best university. Kindly share your memories and what is the thought process that was involved.
When this initial offers came, it was very tempting that you can get into Harvard as a full-time professorial post. But looking back now, last 30 years, I realized that actually at that time what our country needed was more gastroenterologists. Now we are starting to get enough, but at that time when I graduated, there were hardly less than, I think, 50 gastroenterologists for the whole country, and less than 5 or 6 doing therapeutic endoscopic procedures for a population of 1 billion. So I realized that the need was more here, and of course the chance of growth also was more here. So that's the reason why I decided that we should stay back here. In fact, even Hyderabad is a choice that we always wanted to. We got many offers, myself and GB, to go to different states. One stage, the Chief Minister of Bangalore invited us. Similarly, Chief Minister of Bengal invited us many years back. But we steadfastly refused, because not that we are very confined to one area, but we realize that we belong here, and if we develop an institute of national stature here, people from all over the country will come for treatment here. So this is a view that I always had, and fortunately, to a large extent, we could make this a reality.
That's seriously, that takes a lot of courage, and in fact, determination is much anticipated there. Sir, this question is to both. We all know medical field is quite tedious, stressful, and that too during pandemic. My entire medical fraternity is working beyond their limits. So how do you manage all this, sir? Where do you get that energy and force from?
No, I think stress is a part of treatment, whether this pandemic is there or not there. When you're treating patients who have life-threatening diseases, it's always a stressful situation. We have patients coming in suddenly bleeding, vomiting blood, and we have to go in emergency, endoscopy or surgery has to be done to stop the bleed. Life and death then hangs on a very thin string. So there's definitely tensions in the medical field, but I think those who can withstand these tensions, those who can actually compartmentalize these tensions are the ones who actually succeed. We have, as doctors, a unique sense of compartmentalizing all the stress. You have stress somewhere in the family, stress somewhere here, and so you have to actually put them separate together. If you start mixing things together, then you won't function. If you had a bad day for some reason in the house, for example, if you bring it to your hospital, then the patient will suffer. So you have to separate this out. And this compartmentalization is very important. And also the joy of treating patients who are very sick and getting them better, seeing them get better, is an immense joy that no other profession has got. I think as doctors, we have this great opportunity. We are blessed with this great opportunity that we can do this, that you see a patient with suffering, severe pain, he comes and then you treat him, he becomes all right, and the amount of joy you get from this is remarkable. So I think this is a very special profession. Although we have stresses, we also have the other way, the high achievements, it gives us pleasure. So it's both mixed together, and it's very important that we have a balanced view of this.
Very rightly said, actually, Arun. Actually, see, the adrenaline rush that you talk about, actually, it happens during periods of stress and also during periods of excitement. So I think it gets balanced out. When you have stress and excitement working together, it gets balanced out, and we are happy doing this, actually.
And that is why our entire nation says Vaidyo Narayana, sir, because of the service that you offer and the commitment that you show to the profession.
Sure, everybody is grateful, Arun. Sometimes we also have big bads and problems, but I think like in all professions, we have the very good people and a few small patches here. So,
that is so true, sir. That is so true. And one more thing, we have been witnessing a great risk at gut health because of the processed food and the junk food that people are habituated to. So do we have any methodologies or your suggestions to enhance gut health, sir?
Yeah, so one of the most important discoveries in recent years, last 5 years, has been that surprisingly a large part of gut health doesn't depend on us. It doesn't depend upon our intestines, but depends on bacteria in the intestine. The whole small intestine and large intestine is full of bacteria, millions and millions. There are 10 times more cells of bacteria in us than in our body, which means that we are actually totally overrun or overconquered by this bacteria. Small bacteria actually run our whole systems. They not only run the gut, but they produce products which can go into the bloodstream. They control our thinking. Intelligence is supposed to be controlled by them. It's very remarkable discoveries that are made in recent years. So this whole control lies in this bacterial system. We call it the intestinal microbiome. Now, intestinal microbiome is also responsible for many of the diseases that we get. Not only intestinal diseases, but even diseases like depression, cardiac problems, liver problems are all related to this. So we are starting to understand now that instead of trying to treat these diseases directly with medications, if we can treat the bacteria by changing the bacterial flora, we can actually treat many of these diseases. And even in COVID, we have found that these bacteria change. Those who develop severe COVID infection have a different type of bacteria. So they are trying to treat COVID by treating these bacteria. So if we make this bacteria friendly bacteria, which produce products which are friendly to the body, including certain types of metabolites, then we can actually treat the whole body. So this is actually there in our ancient scripts. If you will actually look at the ancient Hindu scripts, there are discussions on this, but we came to realize this only now, that the manipulation of the bacteria can actually result in manipulating health. So how do you keep this healthy? Bacteria, to a large extent, what type of bacteria in our body depends upon what you eat, how you exercise, and what are the bad influence you have. For example, alcohol, smoking and all is known to change the bacteria. Similarly, too many antibiotics or steroids changes to bad bacteria. Taking processed food. Initially, we used to think that processed food is at fault, but now we know it's not processed food. But processed food changes the characteristics of bacteria in us, and that causes all the problem. So healthy, preferably organic food, exercise, abstaining from smoking and alcoholism can all change the bacteria and indirectly change our health. So this is how we can actually maintain. I know this is surprising to many people. They didn't realize that it was actually bacteria and how we control our bacteria. We can become slaves to the bacteria, then of course they control everything, but we should make them our slaves so that they act.
Very rightly said, actually. In fact, actually, this amount of information was help the surgeons also. Actually, initially surgeons were not very understanding about this entire thing about gut microbiome and all. We used to use antibiotics and all left and right, but surprisingly after this information that came in, actually now the entire gut microbiome is the basis of the surgical outcomes. Basically, suppose if you are managing the patient pre-operatively, peroperatively and post-operatively, these patients are put on particular diet so that whatever medication that we give, the good bacteria still proliferate in the body and the outcomes are good. This is the new concept that is emerging. Actually, that is again a close association that has led to use these things in tandem to improve the overall results.
That is true, sir. That is the reason why we have been witnessing a drift in food cycle as well nowadays. And maybe that is the very reason why they say what you are is because of what you eat. And sir, both of you, this question is for both of you. Any message to upcoming medicos or young lads about?
I think I'll take this first actually, because so the biggest thing Dr. Reddy did was actually he established this the translational research in Asian Institute of Gastroenterology. I think this is what has put AIG a step ahead of others. As in today, I think unless and until you go back to the basics and understand the disease and try to find some solutions to this, we'll be doing what we have been doing for hundreds of years together. We have to change, and the change has to come from basic sciences and basic research. And as a part of this, Dr. Reddy, in spite of all the this thing against, he had to set up this institute. People said actually there's no point in setting up a basic science research. He has set up this institute actually, and it has given us so much of translational research that we are able to translate now. I think Dr. Reddy will be the best person to tell you about this translational research that happens in, and I personally believe all the youngsters should have a basic idea of this basic research. In addition to the clinical practice they should do, I think they should have a good exposure to the basic science and the basic research.
True, sir. True, sir.
Yeah, I think what GV said is right. I think one of the problems with youngsters now, and I don't want to blame them because this is very common saying that we were working harder than them and so on, but in general, you find that there is a certain laxity towards work. That dedication that's expected is not so much as it is. Of course, I think it's part of all the modern generations. You see it in high-tech people and so on. They want to go off at say 4 o'clock in the evening, spend time with the family, which is natural. But medical profession requires certain amount of dedication beyond this. So somebody going into medicine, youngster, to think before whether he has this capability to devote a large part of his life to patient care, to medical profession before he actually embarks on this. And once he gets into this, there's no saying that I want to work only from 9 to 3 or 10 to 3 and go off. It is a 24-hour job that we have to. So I think any youngsters who coming into medical profession should first decide whether he has this capability to do this, because I know many doctors' children, when they see the doctors work here, don't take up medical profession, they go to other profession, which is reasonable. Okay, you decide before, sir, but once you decide to become a doctor, then I think it's very important to realize that you have to spend a large part of your time and energies into this one. Number two, also the results can be very slow, unlike other profession. For example, a doctor passing out gets a salary which is actually half or less than his colleague in engineering department, in IT department. So the rewards come very slowly, but what offsets this is the recognition that you get, the satisfaction you get treating these patients. I think you have to balance your thing very carefully, and before a youngster gets into medicine, he must think of these two factors before he gets in. Now, once he gets in, he should be very steadfast. He should have a goal that he has to achieve this, and this goal should be done stepwise. You can't become the world's best gastroenterologist. You can't become the best surgeon like Gv Rao in one day. So you have to do it over a period of time. So set your goals in a stepwise fashion. We call this the SMART goals. Take your time and do it. Everybody who sets a goal, who works towards this dedicatedly, will definitely achieve this. This is the beauty of medical profession is it's not, you don't require brilliance like in basic sciences or engineering. You don't require brilliance. You require somebody who is committed, even of average intelligence. You set your goals right, you work towards these goals, and you will definitely achieve this. And as I said, the greatest satisfaction is the end result of what happens when you do this achievement.
Definitely, sir. It takes 10 to 12 years from the stage of graduation till to post-graduation and become a doctor. So that requires a lot of dedication, and thanks a lot. With this note, we are concluding this meeting, and we have got, in fact, tons of questions the moment we posted the cover page of our article. And in fact, we had to cut down all the questions. I know it's your time is also much precious. Seriously, sir, thanks a lot. And we do have another part of article, sir. We call it as deal with devil. It would be the final question. See, when we say devil here is not COVID or coronavirus, sir. Every Tom, Dick and Harry who has got a social networking account is trying to misguide public, as a result of which few are losing their lives and many are suffering. So could you please throw some light on, sir, both of you?
So this is a problem that we're seeing, especially with the onset of COVID now. People have stopped reading papers, which also used to carry a lot of gossip, but at least had some truth in them. They watch TV, but more than that, the social media, all these WhatsApps and all have become extremely common. Unfortunately, this is an unregulated field. A lot of misinformation is coming in, and this misinformation is creating a lot of problems. Actually, now in the COVID period, it's creating problems with regards to COVID treatment and so on. But unfortunately, I think this is going to become a future that we have to see how it should be tackled, because it's going to get into all our other issues also, not only health. See what happened in United States election with Trump and social media coming in. They actually changed the whole scene, and if this comes into India, which again is very unregulated, people cannot distinguish between what is genuine and what is not, it's going to be a big problem. So I believe strongly that social media is important. It's important to transmit information between people, but some amount of regulation is necessary, and right now the government should start thinking about it, how it should be regulated. If somebody puts an utterly false information in social media, some action should be taken. Government is trying to do that, but it's still very, very early, and I think we have to all work towards this so that we continue to grow as a civilized society, and this social media should not make it a jungle where anybody wants can do anything.
That is definitely true, sir. There is a need of hour that people should understand, which is genuine and which is not. And even unfortunately, our even television media has also started to, promote false information with the half knowledge they have. Thanks a lot, sir. And thanks a lot for your time and patience, which means a lot, I know it. And HealthBuzz is certainly thankful and grateful for all your contribution and participation, sir. Pleasure is ours, sir. Thanks a lot.